Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Show with your host, Jeff Lopes.
We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today, Chris Ruden. What is up, brother?
What's going on, man? How's it going?
I'm very excited. I connected with Chris over social media and we kind of just talked a bit. And when you see his history and kind of his accomplishments and what he's achieved and what he stands for and everything he's been kind of setting forth is pretty amazing. So I just wanted to kind of hear your story, man. I mean, obviously having a disability and conquering and coming to this level where people look up to you, there's a journey through that process, a big journey. Sure. And I want to talk about your parents' involvement. Were they advocate or were they a push towards you, all that stuff? Because people don't know my story. My son was born with CP, cerebral palsy. And it's been this crazy journey where from the first 13 years of his life, I took him from possible wheelchair to running his first marathon, and fitness is a huge component of his life. The kid works out 5-6 days a week, and that is a huge part of your life. So I wanted to take that aspect up and let the audience know and learn more about your kind of your journey into that process. So give me Chris as a 10, 12-year-old, around that age, when kids start really realizing in school and start really noticing where you are and where you're coming from. How did you react to it? How did you overcome, and how was your parents' support, and who pushed you into the fitness as well?
So, I mean, I was born with a congenital birth defect. Like, I have a super cool prosthetic arm now that everyone loves, but like I hid my disability for almost 20 years, up until a few years ago. So the beginning of my life, even before 10, my parents tried to kind of shelter me in a way, protect me in a way. I grew up in a really poor area. And they tried to put me in good schools, but they struggled to afford stuff like that. So I ended up going to public school. And I realized quickly that I was different, like people made that very apparent. And kids are mean anyways, and differences as a kid are like, oh my God, they're terrible. But as an adult, we kind of embrace them. So there's definitely a journey or a shift from feeling bad about differences to leaning into them and capitalizing on them, not just monetarily, but like, actually in quality of life. Yeah. But as a kid, I thought I was normal because I had a small group of friends. I was in a super small school. I had like 7 kids in 3 grades, So everyone knew me. They knew me my entire life. But when I switched schools around that mark, that's when I was made fun of. And like specifically, I always mention this. I went to a new school and I was around that age where I was like, oh man, I want to meet a girl, like
how old were you roughly at that age?
That was like 12.
Yeah.
So I finally worked up the courage to ask this girl, Crystal, out. I went to her in front of the room, in front of everyone. And I was like super hype about it. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to ask this girl out, my first girlfriend. And I look back and my friends are laughing. And I'm like, guys, stop. You're going to mess this up, Yeah. And I turn around and she's making fun of my residual limb with a stapler, calling me claw boy, and humiliated me in front of the entire class. Wow. And that was like 6th, 7th grade. And from that moment, I acted like it didn't hurt, but it killed me, Yeah. And I hid my hand in my pocket for almost 5 years before I put a glove on my hand. And then I wore a glove for 12 to 15 years.
So going through that process, so you said it was roughly around 1920 is when you started coming out of your shell?
1920 is when I started doing stuff in my life to go for, like, I got diabetes, type 1 diabetes at 19 years old. So I got an autoimmune disease at 19 years old. And that's when I started changing everything. Like, I wanted to get into helping people in some sort of way. So I switched from wanting to be a lawyer just because I love arguing with people to exercise science, because I found that I'm just a one-handed guy living in a two-handed world. And so many people need adaptations, but the world was kind of designed for a very specific type of person, Yeah. So I felt like I had to create some sort of pathways, not only for myself, but for people like me. 1 in 4 people have a disability in the world. It's the largest minority in the world, Yeah. So, but it wasn't until 27 that I stopped hiding my disability, and I'm 31.
So it's been a very, very, very long journey through that process.
Very long. And that's why a lot of people see the Disneyfication of success or journeys like it's supposed to be this linear path to success. And that's
never.
It's not like that from a wealth perspective, from a money perspective. It's not like that from an emotional perspective. No one's journey is linear. Fat loss is not linear. Wealth accumulation is not linear. Quality of life is not linear. In the long run, you might see a gradual step up, but in the short process, people have these expectations of where they think they should be And I hate the should be's of life, because there's no such thing as a should be when it comes to individualized, paths of life. So I always felt like I should be confident. I should be okay with my disability. Look at these people. Look at these people. Like this concept of wanting more, I had like a greed for wanting to be like other people, not just money, but I wanted to be as confident as I told myself other people were. When in reality, I didn't know if they were confident. It's just a story I told myself. And the story I told myself about myself was shitty,
Yeah. And that narrative sometimes, like I said, it could eat you or grow you as an individual.
And the crazy part about that is when you realize that narrative was always controlled by you. Influenced maybe by other people, but influence is only possible when you allow it. Influence requires acceptance.
I'm 1,000% agreement in that. I mean, it's so crazy how we allow the thoughts or feelings of other individuals control how we emotionally react. And the end of the
love
day,
that though, because
it's we're the reaction. We're the ones that allow it to happen.
Oh yeah, it's huge. And there's a massive difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is like a knee-jerk thing that happens. It's a small space between what happens and what you choose to do. But responding is intentional. And when I was able to shift from reacting to responding, people are like, how'd you do that? I was like, I started focus on more, accountability and responsibility, not just responsibility, but responsibility, the ability to respond to anything that happens to us. And people are like, oh, easier said than done. Absolutely. You're correct, but better done than said.
I love that. That was a little nugget there. It's so true, because we always perceive our reaction by other people's reaction. And we're always justifying our reaction by how other people react. It's this constant gratification, whether it's through social media, through likes, through views, or whatever it is. We're constantly waiting for everybody else's reaction, and that'll kind of justify our reaction originally, or how we thought we should feel, right? So I love that. Now, going through this, was there a stage of like anger build, like, why did this happen to me and all this stuff? And I'll tell you another aspect of your condition, which actually kind of hits home. My goddaughter has the exact same condition as you. The exact same thing. She was born with this. She's had about, I would say, maybe 8 or 9 surgeries already, and she's only 14. And she's always hiding her hand, always putting in her pocket. She went through the exact same, I'm sure a very similar path that you went. And when I saw you, it obviously hit close to home too, because obviously I've seen this from day one with her as a baby. And I see this anger almost built in her always. Did you go through that stage of anger? And did that anger actually, in a way, was a positive trigger point to helping you change?
So surprisingly, I didn't go the anger route. Like I felt like I might have been an angry kid, which could have indirectly been from that.
Yeah.
But I never had direct anger towards my arm, because I numbed out, completely disassociated. I hid it out of sight, out of mind. I hid it from myself. Yeah. And we do that a lot as people. We hide those things. There's always the stuff we say we want to do, but there's stuff we need to do, but we completely sweep it under the rug. Like, no, not that. And it's that not that thing that ends up being like the main thing we need to work on.
Yeah.
But for me, I was more like trying to prove to myself that I was good enough. I just never considered the disability because I didn't want to think about it. It was so painful and so much that I just like pushed it aside, but there was moments where I was forced to think about it. And in those moments, I actually like did stuff, I talk about a huge moving moment for me was meeting a 11-year-old with cerebral palsy. He was one of the first clients I ever had as like a personal trainer who had a difference, and his mom begged me to work with him. And I'm like, I'm just in school, I got all these certifications that make me sound fancy, but I'm not a guru or anything, but I decided to work with him, and I decided this kid named David, and I decided to give him everything I could. I stopped treating him like patient 47, and I started treating him like David. How I wanted to be treated, not like a person with a disability, not like a guy who looks like he's in the military, not like the narrative everyone pushes on me, but like just me.
Yeah.
And I worked with this kid, and he told me about how people would make fun of him and stuff. And I wanted to like kill him. I'm just like, bro, I have your back. And he taught me so much because he didn't care what people said about him. He was like, I'm who I am pretty much. And he ended up running on the beach for the first time. He couldn't really walk, but after working with him for like 6 months, he ran. And I was like, damn, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, not necessarily fitness, but helping people kind of find out what's their limit in life and how can they break it?
I love that because we are all stuck with limits, and I think a lot of the limits have to do with diagnosis or labels, the health or the a physician puts on you.
For sure. And or society too.
Yeah, 100%. And that was with my son. I mean, when he was discharged at 4 months old from the hospital, spent the first 4 months at the hospital. When he was discharged, his diagnosis and his discharge papers had a label of CP, and I had to sign them off, and I refused to sign them off. And that was kind of our journey beginning, right? And like I said, he's 13, and this kid works out 6-7 days a week already. He's a complete fitness fan, and he's adjusted and understood from a very young age how fitness can redirect or recreate a path for him that society might put him in. And I love that. So diabetes with you. I mean, you're 29, you said?
I'm 31.
When you were diagnosed with type 1?
19.
19. Oh, you're 19.
Yeah.
Where was that stage leading up to that? I mean, was this like, how did this path get you there? Like,
man, I always credit diabetes for the reason I'm not dead. Like, honestly, at that point I was running with a really bad crowd, like lots of fighting, lots of like dumb stuff, like drugs, and just disassociating, anything I could disassociate with. Like, that's where the anger really manifested in, like trying to numb out with substances or drinking or like fighting or like anything I could prove myself or to numb out. Like, that was like the main motivation every single day, you know, like how can I run from this? But I never wanted to face it. So when I got diagnosed with diabetes at 19, I was like in a hospital. I had one of those moments where I'm like, is this what I want for my life? Like, now I'm going to keep doing that same dumb stuff, but like with this condition that I hate, you know, like I didn't ask for this, but I was like, there has to be more to life than being this disabled diabetic kid, you know? And, I just started making those changes. Like, so that was like a really big moment for me to decide, like, I want more from my life. And I find that most people don't experience enough pain to make a change. They get stuck in this purgatory of it's not as good as they want it to be, but not bad enough to change. So they're stuck in this like gray area purgatory of life. And time passes so fast in that area. And for me, that's what happened, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm a strong believer, and there's something I preach all the time, is living with no regrets. Right. And I think that's the biggest thing, is we constantly go through this numbness of life.
Yeah.
1 year becomes 2 years, 2 years becomes 5, 5 becomes 10. Before you know it, it flies by. Like,
when you're just surviving the moments. Yeah. If you're just surviving the moments, they pass.
Even when you're not surviving, even when you're living at your fullest, life is short. We're going through a walk on a little journey, and we don't know when that journey is going to end, right? That's the harsh reality of life.
I mean, think about it now. Like, how long have you been doing this podcast?
A couple of years now.
So like 15 years ago, you know, you probably never thought you'd be in this position. 20 years ago, the problems you had 20 years ago were probably so consuming, but now they're not even a thought. You know, it's crazy what we get obsessed with in the moment, and we convince ourselves this is how it's going to be. This moment right now is how the rest of my life is going to be defined. And it's just not true. You can walk yourself back a year, 5 years, 10 years.
Do you think it's because we focus so much on the future and don't live in the present?
I think we focus on the past and our fears, and we manifest them into our future. So what has happened to us or is happening to us will continue to happen to us. And feelings are not facts. That was one of the best things I ever learned. Feelings are not facts. I feel like I'm never going to get better. I feel like nothing's going to change. I feel like I'm never going to hit my goal. Feelings are not facts. Just because you feel that way doesn't mean they're true. So you need to check your own shit and be like, okay, I do feel that way. That's valid for feeling that, but why? Because I'm scared that it won't work. Okay, that's completely valid that you have a fear. Fear is normal. Yeah. Fear usually happens before something you do that's bigger than what you're used to.
Yeah.
So fear is not a problem. We don't need to hide it or pretend like we're manly and be like, nah, screw that. You know, no, hustle, kill. Nah. What we need to do is address what's going on, validate it, and be like, yeah, that's real. But also, I know I can do this. And I know if I mess up, I don't get to that goal, I'll do something else. You know, it's not fatal. And if it is fatal, you no longer have anything to worry about. So it's like what people worry about is usually something that they can control, and they don't want to because of the responsibility factor.
I love that. I love that. The responsibility factor. I mean, I think a lot of people don't want to put the burden on themselves. So I love
responsibility is painful when you know you're in a hole, or you know you're not where you could be, not should be, but could be. because of your own choices. Now, there are a lot of factors that affect people in minority situations or less fortunate communities or anything like that, socioeconomic factors.
Yeah.
Just because your circumstances have put you in a position, like I have a disability and I became a pro powerlifter and broke a world record. But my story is not your story. It doesn't have to be something grand or be on a TV show or anything like that. Like what I've done, sometimes your story is just taking your circumstance and not being another statistic. So success is like personally defined. And a lot of people have real limitations. Like I literally can't count to 10 on my fingers, but that doesn't stop me from doing other stuff, the self-limiting beliefs that I created.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. And I'm a strong believer too, Chris, and when I've talked about living the present is, and I say this all the time, is a lot of people are so consumed on, like you said, the past, because they think that wrongdoing is going to continue. And I'm a strong believer in your past is a lesson. You'll learn from it. You move on from it. You forget about it. If it's something that's sometimes they're going to be locked in there. If you just kind of tuck it in there, and every once in a while you might revisit it, but it's locked there. The future, you can't control it. You set your goals, you set your path, just live in the present, look down at your feet, live in the present. And I think a lot of people, whether you're parents or entrepreneurs, you're not living in the present, you're not living in the current moment. When you got that call to give me the journey to Titans games, how was that journey? When did you apply? Like, how did that all work?
So funny story, I did not apply, but I'll get to that.
Okay.
So I wanted to be a bodybuilder, 19, 20 years old, wanted to be a bodybuilder. I was a skinny little thing, I was tiny.
Yeah.
And bodybuilding takes a long time, especially when you're a skinny kid. So in the process,
I was in grade 9. I was 6'2", 135, and I started and I stepped on stage. I did 3 shows. I stepped on stage, and I had that on my storyline there. I stepped on stage my first time when I was 18, turning 19, and I did 3 shows. Not an easy journey. Very tough industry.
It's very tough. For me, I decided I wanted to bodybuild when I was 18, 19.
Yeah.
I didn't step on stage till last year.
Oh, you have? Good for you.
Yeah. So that was my ultimate life goal. Like I wanted to be on stage because for me, body image issues plus like being judged on your body, plus I'm asymmetrical in a symmetry competition.
Yeah.
I always want to do that. So that was the goal, but I thought it was never going to happen. So I pursued powerlifting because I got really strong. I did 135. I'm like, oh man, with one hand, that's crazy. And then 225, 315, 405, 495, 585, 605. Then I hit 675.
This is bench or deadlift?
Deadlift. So
yeah.
Deadlifting, I ended up hitting 675, under 200 pounds. And that's the heaviest deadlift of a person with a disability.
That's awesome.
And I broke a few like state records with squat and bench as well, like bench 385, just balancing it on my residual limb.
That's crazy.
So that was amazing. I did that for like 5-6 years. And then I finally said, you know what? I want to commit to bodybuilding. And up until last year, I finally committed to it. And I won. I beat every person who wasn't without a disability, the normies, we call them. So It was cool and all, but what was cooler is like after that, I got in People magazine, like a bunch of cool stuff happened. And I remember this girl who I love, this girl, Sadie, she's a young little girl. She was holding the magazine open. I have the picture, I can send it to you. She's holding the magazine, the People magazine article, the 2-page spread with me in it. And she's missing part of her arm. And her smile just says everything. So it's like,
I love it.
All the medals, all the billboards, all the stuff that has happened, that's cool and all. But like to see those moments of, I never had that, I never had someone to look up to. I didn't have a community. I didn't have people to see, but breaking those limits for them, like immediately at that age, I'm like, that's everything to me. So from there to the bodybuilding and all that, when I got
before you continue, keep your thought process there. Your thought. I have a small ear to ear because like from day one with my son, it's been a continuous journey where we kind of recorded his whole process and everything he's achieved. Yeah. And I look at him and that's going to be him when he's 19, 20, kind of giving everybody else in the same narrative as him, that glimpse of opportunity, the glimpse of joy, that glimpse of just, I could do it. So I love that you said that.
We need to see that.
I just put a smile on my face when you said that.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Even what you're doing with this podcast, like people see, certain guests or certain messages and like, oh, that resonates with me.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important. People think their story is not important. It is. And it's not even the story because everyone has the same story.
Yeah.
You went through some stuff, you got over some stuff, and there's some more stuff coming. We all have the same exact story, but it's the message that we derive from that individuality that actually. So with the TV show, I was doing a bunch of media stuff. I was releasing my book. I was doing all this. And I got a message saying that, you know, they want me to be, you know, on this show. And I thought it was fake. It was like a casting call from LA. It was like 11 at night, and they're like, we want to FaceTime you. I'm like, bro, no, this is not, this is getting weird quick. You know, I almost said no. And I was like, whatever, you know, we'll see. I'm keeping my shirt on. And for real though, like, come on. I'm like, I'm not sitting on a black couch right now. Like, stop. So I ended up taking this call, and we had the call talking about the show and with The Rock. And I'm like, oh, that's crazy. You know, whatever. They call me back like, oh, you're a semi-finalist to compete to get on the show. I'm like, oh yeah, whatever. I'm like, it's not going to happen, you know? And then they're like, hey, we want to book you a flight out. You're going to compete against like 200 people to be on the show. And I'm like, I still don't even know what's going on. I'm like, for real? So I ended up going out to LA. I did this like crazy hard 2-day obstacle course. And like, they tested everything from like camera skill to like sprint, jumping, obstacle course racing, like everything. It was exhausting. 200 other like crazy good athletes. I'm like, that was cool, but there's no way, you know? They called me back and they're like, hey, we picked, you know, 30 guys and you're one of them. I'm like, for the actual show? They're like, yeah. I'm like, by the way, of the 30 guys, we're going to pick 2 or 3 guys and you're going to be on all the billboards with The Rock. I'm like, shut up. And that's what happened. I ended up doing the show, meeting The Rock. Like, he was such a down to earth dude. And then like, after I lost my episode, but like The Rock, after I gave like my little speech, which went viral, I was the only one to talk after I lost. The Rock came down and like hugged me, and he was like all emotional and stuff. It was crazy. It was really crazy.
That's pretty awesome. That is pretty awesome. From the time of recording to the time of release, what's the gap there that you're not
it's usually like anywhere between like 3 to 6 months.
So you have to keep it hush hush, obviously.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Very heavy hush hush. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Has any other opportunities like that come along after that?
There's like little shows and stuff. Like, I almost did The Circle, which not trying to go that route, but for me, it's just been my personal career. My career was the same before the show and after the show. And I had built a lot of my social media notoriety, I guess you would say, before that anyways. So I just continued my same path. It didn't change anything for me. I do a lot of different stuff in terms of like business, entrepreneurship with my speaking business. So the path never changed, and it never will.
Yeah. And how is that going with your speaking business? Like,
it's incredible, dude. I've worked my way up to get in like a very high speaking circuit. That's my main business. I also have a protein bar company, which is cool.
Very cool. When did that come?
All kinds of stuff. What?
When did the protein bar company come out?
That was 3 years ago. Ended up getting hired as a consultant, and then worked my way to marketing director, and then rebranded the whole company and took partial ownership of the company within a year and a half. And
what's the name of the company?
It's called NRG Bite. We've grown like 2,000% since last year alone. So we have been scaling really quickly, and it's really cool when you have like-minded people. Like, my other co-owner is a type 1 diabetic. He's a chef.
Yeah.
And everything is in the world of disability or diversity and inclusion, or some sort of overcoming adversity. So all of the things I do, from like acting, modeling, speaking, writing, consulting, all these things that sometimes even I forget about, they're all under the same umbrella of trying to help people see their world without limits. And that's just my job, you know?
I love it. Let's talk about your parents now. Do you have any siblings, first off?
I do. I have a brother and a sister.
How was how were they growing up with you? I mean, were they on the supportive side? Were they more to themselves? Like, how, like that whole dynamic of the family, like you said, your parents kind of secluded you. Do you wish that they didn't seclude you so much? Like, how was your mindset? Because as a parent, I did the opposite. I'm putting my son in front of every situation. From day one, I'd be like, here, let's get it done. And when he went to finally to wearing braces, the first day he had to go to school to wear with his braces, he was so nervous, didn't want to wear his braces. And I grabbed him and I said, listen, you're wearing these. And it was actually, my wife wanted him to wear joggers pants over his braces. AFO was up to his knees. And my wife's like, okay, let him for till he gets comfortable. It was a summer day. And I'm like, no, you're wearing a pair of shorts. You're gonna be who you are. You're gonna be proud of who you are. And if you don't like them, you're gonna work your ass off to get out of them. And he was supposed to be in until he's 2021. And by 12 years old, he was out of them. So it's that mindset of I never hit him or secluded him from anything. I kind of put him in front of everything. Like, let's deal. And if it's a situation, let's deal with it. We'll deal with it together, but we're going to deal with it. You say your parents kind of secluded you. Do you ever think in your head that they should have pushed you a little bit more or get you out there anymore? Like, how does that, where's your mindset with that?
I'm not sure because there's always what happens and then everything else is a story, you know? So I could choose to tell myself a story of if it was different, it would have been better. But equally, if it was different, it could have been worse. Okay, so everything else is almost wasted energy to think about what could have been, because what could have been could be everything, you know? And people exhaust themselves in getting stuck into what could have been. So maybe looking back, I wish more of my friends like would have helped me, you know, kind of like, hey, bro, you don't need to hide, stuff like that. One of the most powerful moments I ever had in my life, I was at a speaking event. I keynoted 4,000 people. Everyone thought I was super cool. I was walking down this long hallway at this Disney resort, and with this little girl, she was like 7 or 8 years old. And I always hid my hand. I had a glove on, you know, and she grabs my hand. She's just swinging it as we're walking. And I'm like mortified because like, that's a no-go, you know? And she just looks at me and she's like, it's okay. You don't have to hide around me. And I was like, my mind was just blown. And I was like, damn, that moment like motivated me so much to be like, this girl sees me. Like everyone watched me and heard me, but this is the only person who saw me, you know? And I wish, I guess more things could have happened like that, but the way things have turned out, you know, I love where everything is. So I think it's very important if I ever work with other people to get them in communities so that they're around more like-minded people, because that really helped me. And maybe I wish I had that earlier on, but I know what my parents went through and stuff just to like put food on the table, you know? Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have access to the same type of time, you know? Well, if your parents don't have time because they're busy working 4 jobs, you know, they're doing what they can. So there's a lot of situations. I think it's important to realize there's always access to communities at some sort of level, whether it's through social media, you don't have a phone, okay, getting to the library, some sort of like putting yourself out there. And that helps a lot of people, whether it's entrepreneurships or disability or anything.
Of course. Or living with type 1 diabetes. Give me a little rundown so we get a good understanding, because obviously health and fitness is a huge part of what you do. And a lot of people do think when you have type 1 diabetes, there's certain limitations towards health and fitness. And you see it a lot more changing over the last few years, where like hockey players, Domi now is an NHL player that's very, very advocated with type 1 diabetes. And there's a lot of athletes coming out with it. Where's that shift, and where's your mindset towards fitness, towards type 1 diabetes, and how the benefits are and stuff?
So there's a lot of misconceptions around diabetes. You know, there's type 1 and type 2 diabetes. There are other types, but we won't get into that. Type 1 is autoimmune disease. Basically, I don't produce insulin, which helps remove sugar from the bloodstream. Type 2 is a disorder, a metabolic disorder, where you don't produce enough insulin, but you still produce some. A lot of lifestyle factors contribute to type 2 diabetes, whereas type 1 is, they don't even know. It could be genetic, could be hereditary. They don't know. The best way I put it is I have a manual car and you have an automatic car. Anytime I eat, I just have to take insulin exogenously. Anytime you eat, your body does it for you. So technically there are no limits. There are recommendations, kind of like driving on the road. You can technically drive on the sidewalk. You can. You probably shouldn't, but you can, you know? So it's an awareness thing. When I see food, I see it for proteins, carbs, and fats. I see it for macronutrients. I see consequences. You know, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have pizza. Pizza has, let's say, 40 grams of carbs, but there's fat. Fat delays the digestion of carbohydrates. Then we have gluconeogenesis that causes carbohydrates to be turned into protein, you know, so that affects insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity. Whereas when most people see a pizza, they're like, that's delicious. So awareness. Awareness and understanding. Yeah, definitely. And I still eat donuts. I still eat snacks. I just take control of my sugars. Sometimes day 1 to day 2, same exact day, different blood sugars. I posted something this morning. Blood sugars were perfect a day ago, but last night, terrible. But I did nothing wrong technically. So you can't take numbers personally. That's really helped me understand how not to see numbers emotionally.
I love that. And how's your diet wise? I mean, are you a proponent of fasting or anything like that? Any of these?
I personally don't do that. I'm big on like just the data of what like science says, and then when bodybuilding, there's anecdotal stuff. But for the majority, I take the main road of like in total caloric intake plus nutrient balance. And then everything else is preference. You know, at the end of the day, if you enjoy fasting, great. If you don't do it. I don't care how good your diet is. If it makes you miserable and you can't adhere to it, it sucks.
Yeah, of course.
Adherence, I'd rather you be 80% on track for 2 years than 100% on track for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's the biggest problem is people don't understand adherence and they don't understand quality of life. So you have to find anything, not just diet, but life. You have to find a balance in life that you enjoy and then you could adhere to.
I love that. Bodybuilding now. I mean, you did our one show. Is only one show you've done?
Only done one show. Yeah.
Are you going to get back on stage as a go?
I think I'm going to. Like, I realistically could have gone pro. I was just exhausted because I did one prep. Then I got COVID. So then I had to do a whole nother prep back to back. It sucked.
Yeah.
So, but I was like super shredded. I got, I won my class. I got second in overall, which I was super happy with. Anyways, the dude was a monster.
Yeah.
He deserved it for sure. But I know in men's physique, I could have gone pro, and I want to do that. I want to just accomplish that,
Yeah.
But it's weird because that was such a big goal and I did it. And I'm like, oh, now what? That's been a goal for 10 plus years. And when I stepped on stage and did it, I was like, damn.
Yeah.
What do I do now?
It's just setting your goals even higher, which is pretty amazing, right? You're still quite young. So where is the mindset? Like, do you next 12 months or something?
Yeah, ideally, I'd like to step on stage at the end of this year. So I'm finally getting back on track. I enjoyed myself, and now got my business back in place, back in order because of COVID and stuff. With
yeah.
That was interesting.
Did you try going virtual? Like, how'd you?
I did go virtual. Yeah, I went virtual, and it's actually now an adopted model to my speaking business, which is great. Now that I have virtual, I'm offering virtual workshops, virtual keynotes, all this. So I'm almost thankful that COVID allowed me to add to my business, but that's what I feel like happens when you adopt things from bad times. You learn something that can benefit you versus just freaking out, which I had my freak out moment, which we all deserve.
Yeah.
But the difference is freaking out and staying there versus freaking out and doing something about it.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Where's your mindset with, when you talk about everything you're saying right now with the mindset, the shifts and all that stuff? What advice would you give somebody that right now is going through a situation that you went through, where they're 19 or in their teens and they have something that puts them in a different category of a difference? It could be anything. And they don't know how to get out of it, or they don't know how to get themselves around the right people. Where's the first shift in their mind to getting to the right track, and how do they get themselves in a proper path?
So you see this quote behind me? You probably can't read it, but I will say it.
We suffer more in imagination than in reality.
We often suffer more in our imagination than we do our reality. What we tell ourselves about what's going on is much worse than what's actually going on. My best explanation for that is when I refused to show my hand, I was like, I can't show my hand because people make fun of me, because people think I'm weird, because it's disgusting, because they think it's gross, because no one will love me. All these things I told myself, But in reality, here's the reality. I have a hand. That's it. Everything else is an emotional spice that I added to season it,
I love
everything else is the story I told myself, because there's what happens and then the story we tell ourselves. So first and foremost, you have to collect yourself and say, is what I'm saying about the situation real? Or is it being spiced up a little bit? Am I adding to it a little bit more? Because guess what? You lose your job. Now you're afraid you're going to lose everything. The only thing that happened is you no longer have a job. No emotions, zero emotions. We add the emotions. So if we're adding emotions that are making it worse for us to get out, we can control that. Easier said than done, absolutely, but better done than said, like we said. Yeah. So collecting yourself first and saying, am I applying a narrative that's going to help me or hurt me? That's step one. There is no external source you can get into that will fix the internal problems that we have with our narratives and that inner monologue.
I love that. So your prostate hand, what's the capability of that?
So it's actually dead right now because that's who I am as a person. I forget to charge everything.
Okay.
But it has 21 different gestures. It can do the middle finger. It can do pinching, grabbing, and all that. I can put different attachments on here, like a rock climbing attachment or
so
anything.
it works on your sense? Like, how does it work?
It picks up signals on the top and bottom of my forearm because there's 2 sensors.
Yeah.
So I can go really slow. I can go fast. I can crack an egg. I have a few videos on YouTube where it shows like stuff I'm doing with it. It's really cool. And it's good, but there's still limitations. You know, it's not like in the movies, you know? So it can hold about like 50 pounds. I don't work out with it. I made my own kind of strap hook thing that I used.
I saw those videos. So you made that yourself?
Well, I worked with a company. I had them
customized
and then after that, like my goal was to make that into like a real thing, just because I get asked so many times about like that kind of stuff, adaptive equipment.
Yeah. Because
most equipment is made for people with, you know, normal limbs. And there's a huge disparity in people with disabilities who don't work out because they don't think they can. Yeah, so that's a whole nother pathway I'm trying to get into. When
was the first time you actually went to a prostate? What age were you?
To a what?
When you actually went to did the hand and all that, what age were you at?
27.
27.
I didn't get a prosthetic arm until I was 27. I told myself if I ever got approved for a prosthetic arm, which is near impossible because of the way the system is down here in the US, I would take my glove off. It was one of those situations where I set up a situation that I didn't think would happen, so it'd keep me safe. And then it happened, and I was like, I'm not going to go back on my word. So I was with a girl for 4 years. She had never seen my hand. I made a video, like a coming out video, showing my hand taking my glove off. And I gave her the video. I was like, edit this and put it on YouTube. And I was like, I can't do this. It was the first time she ever saw my arm. And she helped me. I put it on YouTube, and I woke up to millions and millions of views, and then getting on the Washington Post, and like it went viral. So it was one of the best and scariest things that ever happened because I jumped in the deep end, and I love that it returned, you know?
I love that. 4 years. Are you still together?
No, not together. We were together for 5 years. She's an incredible person and stuff. But
yeah, that's fine.
It was really cool that, you know, you don't get how uncomfortable people can be.
Yeah.
Until you're with them and you see it. And like people will see me now, like maybe social media and stuff, like, oh, but you're so confident. You're so that they push that narrative because of what they see. And that's the problem. We only have feedback from what we see. That's what makes it bad with social media. You know, same thing with me. Like my house isn't the cleanest right now. I need to clean it up. But what you see right now is just this. Same thing with you. I can't see what's going on outside of this little box.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of people have to understand there's a lot more going on than just what you see. So being more understanding and realizing everyone has their own journey is super important.
I love that. I actually I was a guest on a podcast, and I just did a post today, and I was just talking about the emotional roller coasters we all go through, the downs, when a lot of people might not realize you're going through a down. And then sometimes that moment when you just need to take a step back and take a deep breath. Right. And it's so, I mean, we all go through it.
Absolutely. It's normal.
Yeah. So a couple more questions. I always ask, I mean, I don't always ask, but I mean, superpower. If you had one superpower, what would it be?
One superpower, I would say, I wish if my superpower would be being able to see people for their authentic selves, regardless of the limits that they have up. Okay. I would love to be able to see through the guards people have. I feel like
I don't even think it's a superpower. I mean, it's something I think you could build on, and I think it's something I think you've already built on, right?
I'm trying. There's always going to be people who are very good at hiding, because I know I was extremely good at hiding. No one had any idea I was wrestling with what I was wrestling with. When I tell some of the stuff I've gone through mentally, people are taken aback because like, oh, but in high school you were so confident. I'm like, that's just what you saw.
So when you always wore gloves, did anybody like? Didn't people question it?
I was too confident. I had too much of a presence and too much charisma that no one would dare question.
Interesting.
That's how much of a front I had. I had like such a commanding presence, but a fake commanding presence that people were like, that's just who he is. That's it. You know, zero questions.
Give me your first time on stage.
First time on stage.
Yeah.
That was the moment I knew that's what I needed to do for the rest of my life. I always wanted to, like, my secret question on one of my like logins was like, what's your dream job? And I put like motivational speaker, which makes me want to vomit now. But my buddy was running a nonprofit event for diabetes, and he was like, dude, we don't have a speaker. I would love for you to come out and tell your story, pretty much. And that's what I thought speaking was, just telling what happened to you. So I ended up doing that, and people loved it, like the way I did it, but I knew I could do better. I was like,
of course,
everyone loved it, but I knew. So I started practicing the craft, learning the art of speaking, communicating, learning, voice inflection, tone, rhythm, cadence. I wanted to learn how to be better.
Yeah.
And I practiced that craft, and being on stage, I realized like I had people's attention and I could help people. So many people came up to me, whether they like cried, laughed, everything in between. And I've had people message me years later and be like, that talk you gave was so impactful. So that was a huge moment for me. And I decided like, I'm going to be a speaker. I don't think my mom understands what I do still to this day, but I'm sure, like, I always question, like, what does she tell people that I do when they ask, like, what does your son do? I'm sure she's like, he's
social
he's
media.
Great. He's great. Yeah. Yeah. He does the Facebook.
I love it.
That's great.
If something were to happen to you today, in a few words, how would you want to be remembered or described by your loved ones?
I guess my take on this is kind of morbid in a weird way, but I don't mean it to be like negative. Like, I personally don't really care about leaving a legacy. I know that sounds super weird.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
I care about people doing the best that they can for themselves. So maybe that's my legacy, is empowering people to be the best versions of themselves that they can be, and living a quality of life that they're proud of, not that other people are proud of. If I could leave a true legacy, maybe that's the superpower I want. I want people to find the life that they're proud of and stop trying to live a life to make other people proud of them.
Yeah, I love it.
So many people are trying to impress other people, social media, everything. Like, we all get guilty of it. Like, I need the best camera equipment so that people will like my stuff better. Like anything. And sometimes we even convince ourselves that that's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
We know that's what we're doing. We want to impress people, which is kind of normal. But when you get run by that idea of wanting to have people like you, that's a level of people pleasing that doesn't allow you to live an authentic, like, real life. And a lack of authenticity does not allow for quality of life. It took me a long time to learn that.
Yeah. And I believe many of us are living through that, right?
Absolutely. Social media exacerbates that idea. And it's a natural human thing to want to be liked, but there's a level, like anything. It's good to have emotions. It's bad to be controlled by emotions. There's good and bad of everything. You have to realize, like, where are you in that spectrum of, like, am I living the life for me or for other people, or how I want to be seen? Are you trying to control how people see you in a way, versus just existing, Yeah. A lot of people have a problem with control. They want people to think a certain way. I don't want you to think of me like that. Well, who says you're in control of that? You could be the nicest person in the world and someone can think you're an asshole. It's not your job. Your opinion of me is not my responsibility to manage.
Say that again. I love that.
Your opinion of me is not my responsibility to manage.
I love that. I said that before. I love that because it's so true, because we're constantly doing the opposite.
We're trying to be like Yelp. We are so worried about other people's reviews. We're like, oh, I need to maintain my 5-star review with the people who don't pay my bills.
Yeah.
That's a story you're telling yourself. That's a narrative you're committing to. And that's a quality of life you're reducing based on your story. If you notice, it's all on you.
I know. I love it. Control what we can control and focus on what we could focus on.
Absolutely.
I love it. Anything you want to leave with our audience today?
I just hope people realize there's a difference between creating a life that other people are proud of you, and creating a life that you're proud of. And it's great when they intersect, but when you commit to the life you're proud of over making other people proud, that's where real quality of life and contentment comes in.
Yeah.
We need to stop being as obsessed with chasing happiness as a final thing. And happiness is a byproduct of quality of life. So making sure that you're living true to you and not the version of you want everyone to like. I did that for 20 plus years, and I didn't start living until 27. I can say that.
I love it. And I love the bare fact that you could sugarcoat a lot because you're doing well for yourself now. So, but you don't. You're very transparent. And when I
try and show, I've had downs and ups. I've had,
it's so important. It's so important to do that.
Yeah, it's really important because I've had moments where I'm like, oh my God, am I failing? You know, and I've had moments where people might see what I'm doing as like really successful, and that's cool, but I'm not doing it for anyone else. You know, I'm proud of myself, and sometimes I want to make a lot of money, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I want to do a lot of events, sometimes I don't.
Which
I'm
is
living the life I want.
all okay. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm doing the life I want to. You know, I'm not addicted to hustling. I'm not addicted to being lazy. I enjoy building the life that I'm proud of, and that's day by day and moment by moment. I have long-term goals and short-term goals. Don't get me wrong. I have investments. I have cool stuff, you know, but I also know that I'm probably going to go eat a donut, and that fucking makes me happy, you know, like stop being so crazy, guys. Like stop trying to impress people with all this hustle kill stuff. Like, if you like that, great, but make sure you like it and you're not liking it to get people to like you. That's my point. That's my point.
This is awesome, man. This is awesome. Awesome. How could our audience get a hold of you?
My name is Chris Ruden. So chris@chrisruden.com for email. My website is chrisruden.com. I have a book called The Upper Hand. 1, because it's a dad joke and I love making dad jokes. 2, because it's about getting the upper hand over yourself and the art of self-communication. And this is a huge message for me and for everyone. And then all my socials are just at Chris Ruden.
I love it. I love it. I love it. This has been awesome, brother. And I'm sure we're going to have you on again. And I appreciate it.
Oh, for sure.
And if you're ever in Toronto, I'd love to hang out. If I'm ever in Florida, I'll reach out to you. But
please do.
So you said your coach is in Toronto. So aren't you? I'm surprised you haven't come down here to try to visit.
Not yet because of COVID and everything.
Yeah.
Before COVID, but I plan on, once things are kind of like lessen up with that, I would love to come out there and meet up with both of you guys, you know, and I'd love to connect you two as well, because great minds, great communities.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I appreciate that as well. This is awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.